Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to ramble. It's time for the Royal Ramble Wrestlecast. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings and welcome to the inaugural edition of the Royal Ramble Wrestlecast. I am your host, Big Dame. Thank you all for joining me on what is sure to be an epic journey. And boy, oh boy, what a way to start this whole podcast off. My goodness. We are just 2 weeks into 2023 and already it looks to be even crazier than 2022. But before we get into the proceedings, this will be considered the first official episode of the Royal Ramble Wrestlecast. Now, this used to be known as the FTP Wrestlecast. However, the episodes of that show has not yet been published. And what I plan on doing is I'm going to have what's called the FTP archives uploaded to our YouTube channel. So therefore, you can be able to get real-time analysis from me regarding some of the craziest stuff that happened in the world of professional wrestling in 2022. So make sure you subscribe to our Royal Ramble Wrestlecast YouTube channel and check that out. Just also subscribe for new content that we're going to have coming for your way on the Royal Ramble Wrestlecast. For example, whenever there's a pay-per-view coming up, such as, let's say, the Royal Rumble, I'll be live shortly after the show. So it's going to be a good time, man. And we're in the midst of planning all sorts of fun content for you guys to check out on the YouTube channel. Of course, this podcast you can listen to pretty much everywhere: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. And with your support, we can help make this grow. Now, a little bit about myself. I've been a wrestling fan for, well, almost 30 years. I first came into the game by playing a video game. It was Tecmo World Wrestling for the Nintendo Entertainment System. At first, I thought it was just a regular fighting game like Street Fighter 2 or any of this other stuff. But, you know, they were in the ring and these guys were wearing Speedos and tights. And I would be mesmerized by anytime I would do a certain move. Sometimes they have a little animated cutscene where you perform a suplex or a giant swing or any other of those type of maneuvers. And I'll be like, wow. Now keep in mind, this is coming from the same developers of Tecmo Bowl, also on the NES. And man, I've also watched instances of wrestling on television before then, but I didn't necessarily sit down and watch. I probably glimpsed at it, you know, while mom was changing the channel or whatever. But where things really took off was when I went over my cousin's house and he happened to have bought a cartridge from one of his friends of WWF Royal Rumble for the Sega Genesis. Hence the reason why you heard that intro in the beginning. The Royal Rumble video game was where I first got into finding out about superstars such as Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man Randy Savage, rest in peace to him, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Crush, rest in peace to him, IRS, the model Rick Martel, Papa Shango, one of the many faces of Charles Wright, the bad guy Razor Ramon, of course, rest in peace to Scott Hall, The Undertaker, and the one and only Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Oh, and let's not forget the legendary Bret the Hitman Hart. So all the characters on that game we got to play as. And it was just some real cool stuff, man. And next thing you know, I end up stumbling into wrestling, whether it's my grandma's would-be husband at the time. You know, I was going over his house sometimes too, and he would always have it tuned into Monday Night Raw. I got into it. I pretty much came into it in the summer of 1994 in the midst of Bret Hart feuding with Jerry Lawler. But anyway, I know they was in the midst of a feud, and they was also building up to SummerSlam with that infamous Undertaker versus Undertaker mirror match. So, man, I mean, it's crazy even back then to even think about. But anywho, so I got into watching wrestling. Then I stumbled across WCW, and this is around the time Hulk Hogan was coming into the company. You know, that whole ticker tape parade they had at Disney MGM Studios. And then by the time the WWF Raw video game came out in like 1994, late 1994, that's when I started getting in. You know, I played both the Genesis version and later on the Super NES version. I've rented both of those games from Blockbuster. And, you know, it's just one of those things where it's just, I got into it more and more and more. And then next thing you know, I began watching every week. You already know the rest of the history as it relates to wrestling. I'm not going to get into further details. I just want to tell you about how I became a wrestling fan and how I've been one for almost 30 years. And I've pretty much been there from the good and the bad, through the light and the dark, everything you can think of, you know. Now, the thing is, I'm not your typical wrestling fan. You don't see me in any sort of, I don't have a lot of wrestling merchandise. I don't have any wrestling action figures. I don't have, you know, tapes upon tapes or DVDs of wrestling stuff, you know, but that doesn't make me any less of a fan. You know, I can tell you damn near front to back what it's all about when it comes to the history of professional wrestling. And for much of that history, you know, let's just be real. When it comes to the most successful brand of pro wrestling there has ever been, you can't get no bigger than World Wrestling Entertainment, formerly the World Wrestling Federation. I guess now this is going to be a good time to start talking about what everybody has been talking about over the last couple of weeks. Vince McMahon, the creator of sports entertainment, the founder of what is now known as WWE, longtime WWE chairman and CEO until last summer. Vince announced his retirement amid all sorts of sexual misconduct allegations, various affairs, scandals, hush money stuff. It was on Twitter where Vince announced his retirement. At 77, time for me to retire. Thank you, WWE Universe. Then, now, forever together. We thought, oh man, this was it. You know, because we often thought that Vince was going to die just running WWE. And it had to take some allegations in order to do him in. You know, I mean, you would think this man is bulletproof, right? You know, he beat the federal government. You know, everybody remembers the steroid trial from 30 years ago and how he was able to beat that. I mean, the man is just bulletproof, man. I mean, I guess that's gonna be the case now too. But yeah, man, a lot of people were singing for joy that Vince McMahon was gone from the company. But let's just be real. Even I knew back at that time that he's not going to stay gone. But since then, Stephanie McMahon, who herself was coming back from a leave of absence, would end up taking over as chairwoman and co-CEO of WWE alongside Nick Khan, who by that time was the WWE president. And of course, her husband, Triple H, Paul Levesque, is the chief content officer as well as the head of creative for WWE. And over the last 6 months, WWE programming has pretty much become, well, let's just say tolerable. It's become a lot more watchable. It's become a lot more easier to digest than just oh my God, I gotta watch this crap every week. That's the way a lot of us was feeling when Vince was running the show. But now Vince is gone, or so we thought. See, the one thing that I'm sure you guys understand when it comes to Vince, this son of a bitch got a huge ego. And he cannot stomach the fact that he's not the one running things when it comes to WWE. Folks, what you are seeing is, you guys remember in early 2002, after the Royal Rumble, in the midst of this whole little storyline with Vince McMahon and Ric Flair being 50% owners of the company after the invasion angle, when the WWF at the time, beat the Alliance in a winner takes all Survivor Series match, elimination match. And then, Vince pretty much thought he regained control of the company. Well, Ric Flair ended up becoming 50% owner of it. They had a match at Royal Rumble. It went into that SmackDown, building up to No Way Out, where Vince sat in that chair and just continuously talked to himself in the mirror. And then the final segment of that promo goes, I'm not going to let Ric Flair kill what I created, because I'm going to kill my creation. I'm going to inject the WWF with a lethal dose of poison. If anybody's going to kill my creation, I'm going to do it. And of course, he turned around to reveal the NWO logo painted on the back of his chair, because it was, of course, the introduction of the NWO, the founding members of the NWO, Hogan, Hall, and Nash, into WWF. Now, that promo is now playing out right in front of us in real time, because here we are 6 months later, and Vince McMahon is now back as executive chairman of WWE. Now, how could this have happened? Well, let's start from this point. In a Wall Street Journal report, sources revealed that Vince was looking to make a comeback at WWE. Vince believed that he received bad advice from people close to him regarding his retirement, and he ultimately could have weathered the storm of the investigation and allegations. And despite Vince's retirement, he of course has maintained majority ownership of WWE through owning the majority of WWE shares, and continues to wield the majority of voting power, making a comeback at least possible. So that's what a lot of people seem to have forgotten in all of this. Despite the fact that Triple H was running things creatively, Vince is still the majority shareholder of the company, which pretty much means he's still the boss, even before all of this happened. Fightful reported back in November that a WWE spokesperson told him that McMahon was done and would not be returning to the roles that was taken over by Triple H and several others. And then, Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful said that numerous WWE higher-ups I've spoken to in recent months have indicated to us they want nothing to do with that and are happy with the direction. I haven't heard one person there itching from a Vince return. Fast forward a month later, the Wall Street Journal report that McMahon is now actively planning a return to WWE to pursue a sale of the company. In an attempt to do so, he has appointed himself, George Barrios, and Michelle Wilson to the WWE Board of Directors. Vince said WWE is entering a critical juncture in its history, with the upcoming media rights negotiations coinciding with increased industry-wide demand for quality content and live events, and with more companies seeking to own the intellectual property on their platforms. The only way for WWE to fully capitalize on this opportunity is for me to return as executive chairman and support the management team in the negotiations for our media rights, and to combine that with a review of strategic alternatives. My return will allow WWE as well as any transaction counterparties to engage in these processes, knowing they will have the support of the controlling shareholder. Now keep in mind, when it comes to George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, these guys were co-directors and presidents of WWE from 2018 to 2020. Vince had this to say about them. Miss Wilson and Mr. Barrios are highly qualified directors whose professional experience positions them to help the company achieve the best possible outcomes in both initiatives. As former WWE co-presidents and board members, they are intimately familiar with industry dynamics and the organization's operations and has helped guide the company through past successful media rights negotiations. I look forward to working closely with Michelle and George, as well as the company's remaining directors and management team, who have my full support and confidence. WWE has an exceptional management team in place, and I do not intend for my return to have any impact on their roles, duties, or responsibilities. So then, a day later, that step has been made official. The SEC filing, signed by Vince and dated January 5th, 2023, shows that board members Joellen Lyons Dillon, Jeffrey R. Speed, and Alan M. Wexler has been removed and has been replaced by George Barrios, Michelle Wilson, and Vince himself. Another internal change that the SEC filing made clear is that any material media contracting action or stock issuance must be approved by stockholders, and Vince controls over 80% of the voting power in that regard. That means any media rights deal or company sale must be approved by Vince himself. Emails from Vince to the company board, shared by Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, confirmed that Vince is in fact using that power to leverage himself into an executive chairman position, informing the board he will not approve either kind of deal otherwise. So bottom line is, Vince was holding that company hostage. He was holding his own company hostage so he can be able to get back into power. And sure enough, that's what's happened. So yes, Vince is back as the executive chairman for WWE and is looking to facilitate a sale of the company. We'll get into that momentarily. However, another shoe that dropped this week is Stephanie McMahon. She was serving her duties as as co-CEO and chairwoman of WWE following Vince's supposed departure. She herself dropped this bombshell on Tuesday evening. This is what Stephanie said on her social media. Dear WWE Universe, about 8 months ago, I took a leave of absence and within a few weeks, unexpectedly had the opportunity of a lifetime. I had the privilege to return as the co-CEO and chairwoman of the board of WWE. I cannot put into words how proud I am to have led what I consider to be the greatest company in the world, working alongside a remarkable leadership team and one of the strongest executives I've ever known in my co-CEO, Nick Khan. Our founder, Vince McMahon, has returned as executive chair and is leading us an exciting process regarding strategic alternatives. And with Nick's leadership and Paul Triple H Levesque as chief content officer, I am confident that WWE is in the perfect place to continue to provide unparalleled creative content and drive maximum value for shareholders. WWE is in such a strong position that I've decided to return to my leave and take it one step further with my official resignation. I look forward to cheering on WWE from the other side of the business, where I started when I was a little kid, as a pure fan. I will always remain dedicated to WWE. I truly love our company, our employees, our superstars, and our fans. And I am grateful to all of our partners. Thank you for everything. Then, now, forever together, Steph. So yes, Stephanie is gone. She is resigned as the CEO or the co-CEO and the chairwoman. Following that announcement, WWE put out a press release that included thoughts from her very own father. First, I'd like to express my full support for Stephanie's personal decision. I'll forever be grateful that she offered to step in during my absence, and I'm truly proud of the job she did co-leading WWE. Stephanie has always been the ultimate ambassador for our company, and her dedications and her decades of contributions have left an immeasurable impact on our brand. He then, of course, talked about the fact that Nick Khan will serve as the sole CEO going forward. According to Vince, Nick Khan's business acumen and mastery of the media industry has helped catapult our business to record revenue and profitability. And he looks forward to working with him as well as WWE as WWE explores strategic alternatives during this critical juncture in the company's history. Yes, strategic alternatives is the term of the week. Look, man, let me tell you what I think about this. I feel, Vince just did not want to step down. He did not. We knew that Vince wasn't really wanting to go anywhere, even with all these allegations and everything else. But we just would have never known that it was going to have to take him holding his company hostage in order to get back into a position of power. But what about Stephanie, though? I'm really starting to believe that Stephanie and Vince has internal beef with one another. This ongoing family drama with the McMahons, it ain't just something that happened on screen, ladies and gentlemen. This, you would not be wrong in believing that Stephanie, as well as Triple H and probably many others, had a large part in the information leaking to the Wall Street Journal about sexual misconduct when it comes to Vince. Come on, man. Vince was having his way with a lot of females backstage, including some female talent. The Mr. McMahon character that you have been seeing on screen for the last 25 years is not that far off from Vince McMahon, the person. I mean, just the simple fact that you had former referee Rita Chatterton, who accused Vince of misconduct back in the day and seek millions of dollars in damages from him. She has resurfaced recently. All these other stuff that's happened with Vince has resurfaced, but you didn't hear no more about them, after a little bit. Probably the news reported on that probably once or twice, and then you never even heard about it again. Compared to people like Bill Cosby, for example. The bottom line is Vince is back in power. Stephanie is gone. And where does that leave Triple H? Yes, he's still the chief content officer. Yes, he's still running creative. But it's only going to be a matter of how long will that last. In fact, Triple H held a talent meeting before this past week's SmackDown. He pretty much told the talent that Vince was back to lead the charge, to help facilitate the sale. For those who have followed me on my own personal Facebook page, I put out a video when news broke, so we thought, about WWE being purchased by the Saudi Arabia Private Investment Fund, when that turned out to not be the case. This is why, ladies and gentlemen, you need to consider the source. The only reason I left that video up is to serve as promo for this very podcast you're listening to right now. So Triple H told the talent that nothing going on with Vince will impact the creative direction of the shows. He admitted that anything can change, but for now, he is still in charge of the company's creative direction. And he understands the reason for concern. As well said, Trips, but your wife pretty much damn near said the same thing, and now she's gone. So ain't no telling what's going to end up happening to Triple H's position within the next few weeks, but I guess only time will tell. One thing for certain, you're going to see Vince pop back up with between the Raw 30th anniversary show coming up in 2 weeks, and the Royal Rumble. Somehow, some way, we're going to see Vince back on our screens. Now, in that video I posted on my own Facebook page on Tuesday, I told you guys that it was being reported by Steven Millhausen of The Zone, that's DAZN. He tweeted out that WWE has been bought by Saudi Arabia and will be going back to being private for the first time since October 1999, when it became a publicly traded company. And it was unknown that Vince McMahon was going to be returned to the head of creative, but is expected by some people. Well, folks, that tweet has since been deleted. Cassidy Haynes of bodyslam.net also tweeted out, for what it's worth, I'm told the Saudi deal is done. They're taking the company private. So it was really a combination of both Cassidy Haynes and Steven Millhausen who said that the deal was done for Saudi Arabia to buy WWE. However, Cassidy Haynes probably pretty much had to walk that back a little bit. He followed up later on in the evening saying the deal isn't completely finalized because WWE must provide notice to shareholders and other parties. There are legalities to go through as the company is publicly traded. But again, I'm told that a deal has been agreed to in principle. And of course, Steven Millhausen quote treated Mr. Haynes and saying he heard the same thing. Needless to say, all that shit is not true. It's all up in the air right now who's going to own WWE. But we do have potential suitors that may be looking to add this very valuable IP to their portfolio. Let's go over the potential buyers of WWE. First, we have Comcast, who of course owns NBC Universal, and they of course have WWE Monday Night Raw as well as NXT airing on USA Network, one of their many different cable channels. You guys don't need me to tell you the history between Raw and USA. Of course, we're about to celebrate Raw's 30th anniversary. We all remember the date, January 11th, 1993, from the Manhattan Center in New York City. Just this past week, my God. It was on USA from 1993 all the way up to 2001. From 1993 all the way up to 2000 when it moved to the new TNN. TNN, of course, became Spike TV. That lasted from 2000 to 2005. Then they moved back to USA, where they have been ever since. And also, not to mention, of course, Peacock, the streaming service of NBC Universal, has exclusive rights to the WWE network here in the United States. Between all that history, Comcast makes a hell of a lot of sense as a potential owner of WWE. Comcast has a market capitalization, and I'm getting this data from CNBC.com. Comcast has a market capitalization of more than $160 billion and can easily afford the company, especially with a $9 billion or more check coming as soon as January 2024 from Disney for a 33% stake in Hulu. Now, Comcast can lock up WWE in perpetuity without having to pay upcoming rights renewal increases and can use the company's IPs for theme parks, movies, and other spin-off series. Still, Comcast CEO Brian Roberts said in October, the bar is the highest it's ever been in terms of M&A. M&A is business jargon for mergers and acquisitions. Then you have Fox, who of course airs Friday Night SmackDown. Now, they seem less likely to pull off a deal than Comcast because of its $17 billion market valuation and this ongoing dalliance with recombining with News Corp, which is Rupert Murdoch's company, and its lack of presence in the global streaming wars. I mean, Fox, what do they have? They have Tubi. That's all. All they stuff they had on Hulu is pretty much now with Disney. So they had to deal with SmackDown. Everybody knows about the, paying over $1 billion something to WWE to have SmackDown air on their network for 5 years. Of course, everybody knows that Fox sold off most of their entertainment assets over to Disney for $71 billion. And speaking of Disney, that's another potential buyer. This whole thing with Bob Iger coming back into the fold as CEO after what it seems to be a disastrous period with Bob Chapek. Once again, according to CNBC, WWE fits Disney in the same way that it fits Comcast. It will bolster Disney's streaming ambitions, perhaps with ESPN Plus. We all know about, ESPN and WWE having a relationship over the course of the last decade. It would support the linear network business, and it would add some heft to merchandising and theme park businesses. Comcast didn't want Disney walking away with Fox in 2019 and drove up the price by tens of billions by topping Iger's initial bid. Could Iger see WWE as the next IP battle between Disney and Comcast? Only time will tell. Then we get to Netflix. Now, Netflix has shied away from sports and all other sort of live events. Their first live anything is going to take place in March with Chris Rock doing his stand-up special, his first stand-up special since the infamous Oscar slap that we have talked about very many times on our other platforms, the Cuban Cigar Crisis, as well as our own individual podcast, talking about my podcast, the Big Name Audio Experience, and of course, Louis S. Black, my partner, my comrade, the Louis S. Black Show. We have talked about it all the damn time, but it will be his first stand-up special since that took place. In fact, both he and Dave Chappelle are due to be here in St. Louis by the end of the month at the Enterprise Center. Tickets are already sold out. I hate that happened. I couldn't get it, but I digress. Netflix, they have shied away from sports and live events, but they recently became open to the idea of owning a league outright or taking the ownership stake. Now, owning a sports league will give Netflix the ability to create video games, spin-off series without any sort of friction. They found success in Formula One Drive to Survive documentary series. But Netflix doesn't own Formula One. That would be Liberty Media. That's another potential buyer for WWE. Though I kind of don't see that happening. I mean, they already got Formula One, Sirius XM, and Pandora. So yeah, you got Liberty Media, you got Netflix, then comes Amazon. Now, Amazon spent $1 billion per year on Thursday Night Football. They also stream some Major League Baseball games, as well as a bunch of Premier League soccer games. How good would it be for Amazon to be able to use Prime Video, for example, and be able to have live content coming from WWE, as well as their enormous library, and get more and more people to get Prime, which comes with Prime Video, so they can be able to watch some WWE content. Then you have Apple, also interested in sports rights, but of course have no history of doing anything as relates to multi-billion dollar acquisitions. Keep in mind that Amazon paid $8.4 billion for the legendary movie studio MGM and $13.7 billion for Whole Foods. So trust and believe, they got the money. You also got Endeavor Group Holdings, that's ran by Ari Emanuel. I believe he's the brother to former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel. Now, Endeavor could end up getting WWE and adding that, because they also already own UFC. They bought that in 2021, and that deal was worth a lot of money. UFC generated more than $1 billion in revenue in 2022. and then their enterprise value of just above about 11 billion makes WWE a huge swing for the company. So you got all these different people, but the group of people that everybody just can't seem to get out of their heads would be none other than the Khan family. That's right. Tony Khan and his dad, Shahid Khan. We all know Tony owns AEW, and both him and Shahid together own the Jacksonville Jaguars, which, did you see that game last night? I can't believe it. They just eat by with that wild card game. Oh, man. They beat the Chargers. Man, I'm sure he was jumping up and down, jumping for joy. My God, Tony was beside himself last night. I'm pretty sure. But anywho, so it was reported by the Barron's, who also is the sister company of Dow Jones and Company. The Khan family are also potential buyers of WWE. Per a new report from Fightful, their sources indicate that they haven't talked of such a merger or purchase discussed, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened either. It makes sense from every perspective to at least throw your name out there. While it wasn't believed to be a real possibility, far stranger things have happened. Look, I'm just gonna stop right there. There is no way in hell Vince will ever allow Tony, Shahid, or anybody with the last name of Khan outside of Nick on any part of WWE. It will be the inverse to what took place in March 2001. I know I was there. A majority of you listening were there when WWE ended up purchasing WCW and the wrestling landscape changed forever. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Tony Khan ends up coming onto WWE television and pretty much doing the same thing Vince did, showing up on what would be the very last WCW Monday Nitro, and then end up having a simulcast where, of course, Shane ended up being on Nitro in Panama City, and Vince would be in Cleveland. We all remember that iconic moment, one of their final build-ups to their match at WrestleMania 17. The name on the contract does say McMahon. In this case, it would be something like the name on the contract does say Khan. However, the contract reads Tony Khan. I'm laughing so much because it's like, come on. You really think that? No. Even though we've been conditioned to say never when it comes to wrestling, there is no way in hell Vince will ever allow Tony Khan, his daddy, or anybody in that family to get anywhere near WWE. Just so Tony can be just like him and say, I own my competition. Tony... I think Tony just needs to focus on AEW only and whatever's going on with the Jaguars. Don't worry about trying to put your name in the hat, man. But as you can hear, ladies and gentlemen, it made for very, very interesting conversation. But anyway, with all that going on, man, who is to say who gets to own what when it comes to WWE? You know, only time we can speculate all day, but only time will tell. Whoever is the new owner, you know, hopefully they'll have the best intentions in order to make things the best it could possibly be. On to other news. January 4th, New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom 17 in the Tokyo Dome. A lot of good matches happened on that event. Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay was a great match. The match with FTR versus Goto and Yoshihashi, in which Yoshihashi and Goto won the tag team titles from them. Carl Anderson was there. Even though he's a WWE contracted talent, he faced his former Bullet Club mate Tama Tonga. Tama Tonga won the Never Openweight Championship. Then, of course, the main event, Okada versus Jay White. Okada is once again the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. But the moment everybody was talking about was the debut of Mercedes Monet, the former Sasha Banks in WWE. Ladies and gentlemen, ever since May, when Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out on the company because they didn't agree with the creative direction that they were going in as relates to them being the women's tag team champions. I'm pretty sure a lot of you already heard the story. They was due to be in a 6-pack challenge, but before that could end up happening, they dropped the belts off on John Laurinaitis' desk. Of course, Laurinaitis ain't there anymore himself, and just walked out of the building, which resulted in the following Friday on SmackDown. I'm sure per Vince, Michael Cole chastised Sasha Banks and Naomi for making that decision, being very disappointed, blah, 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 blah. You know the story. Since then, we've been wondering what Sasha / Mercedes' next move was going to be when it came to wrestling. Of course, she's been doing her thing on the runway, making all sorts of different convention appearances. Of course, she's doing The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. So, Mercedes definitely kept herself busy after that whole ordeal. And we often speculate what was going to happen next and where she would turn up as far as wrestling, if it wasn't going to be WWE. Well, we finally got that answer on January 4th at Wrestle Kingdom. Shortly after Kairi's match with Tam Nakano at Wrestle Kingdom 17, that took place for about 5 minutes. Then all of a sudden you hear some music that pretty much reminds you of Chris Cross's Jump. I'm like, you didn't even try to hide that you ripped that shit off, man. Come on. You could have had better music than that. I mean, I've grown to like it a little bit, but come on now. You could have done better than that. But anyway, so Mercedes Monet, the CEO as she billed herself, came out to the ring, and then after acting like she was going to shake Kairi's hand for a job well done defending that title, she ended up oh my God, that damn move she tried to do, oh my God, that was a botch like my motherfucker. My God, I'm like, man, that was not good. That was not good at all. What an audacious start to her return to wrestling. So Mercedes and Kairi are due to battle at New Japan's Battle in the Valley in San Jose on February 18th. That's their next major American event. And from the looks of it, that event is damn near sold out, if it's not completely sold out by this point, largely based off of that news. So you can't say that Mercedes is not somewhat of a needle mover for New Japan's women's division, which is powered by Stardom, I should say, because, of course, New Japan and Stardom are both owned by Bushiroad. The rumors were all true. Everybody was speculating about the fact that she signed that agreement. It was reported that she has signed that agreement. And she's also going to be a part of this little event that they'll have in April. Now, seeing as that Sasha, or should I say Mercedes, showed up at NJPW's Wrestle Kingdom, one would believe that also would mean that she could show up in AEW because of their working relationship, their partnership. And a lot of people have speculated that just this past episode of Dynamite in the Kia Forum in Los Angeles, that Mercedes was going to be the mystery partner of Saraya, the former Paige in WWE, going up against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, as well as the AEW Women's World Champion, Jamie Hayter. Now, that did not turn out to be the case, and Saraya had Toni Storm as her partner. and you heard a lot of notable boos pretty much saying, hey, where's Mercedes? We thought Mercedes was going to be here. And of course, a lot of people were disappointed that Mercedes didn't show up. Oh. They didn't outright specify that Mercedes was going to be there. You just assumed she was going to be there. Yeah, they leaned into it by having Britt drop the line of boss during that little promo she and Jamie Hayter did with Renee Paquette and of Tony with Tony Schiavone, because you know they had to have Renee do the stuff with Saraya and Toni Storm and Hikaru Shida, and then Schiavone did, that's her buddy, with Britt and Jamie Hayter. But anyway, a lot of people were not thrilled about the fact that Mercedes didn't show up. In fact, Mercedes might already have heat with New Japan and Stardom. Check this out. This is according to the good old Wrestling Observer newsletter. Mercedes recently posted photos of from the Sendai Girls Dojo, while adding that she desired to step into the ring with not only their wrestlers, but also wrestlers from Tokyo Joshi Pro. But she's working with Bushiroad, who of course owns New Japan and Stardom. And the higher ups in the company feel that she should only be promoting Bushiroad promotions, not any others. Notably, Mercedes never attended any Stardom events or visit their dojo while being overseas. That might have not been expected of her to begin with, so you got to give her the benefit of the doubt there. And it's very possible that her visiting and talking about rival companies is frowned upon in the Japanese wrestling industry. So obviously she still got a lot to learn about how wrestling culture in Japan works versus America. It seems to not slow Mercedes down at all. In fact, she is going to be cast in a new movie called The Collective, which stars Paul Ben Victor, Lucas Till, Ruby Rose, Tyrese Gibson, and Don Johnson, the legendary Don Johnson. So she's working on that movie. Of course, like I said, she's still doing The Mandalorian and who knows what else, man. So, we'll see what ends up happening with old Mercedes before long. And the last thing I want to talk about, I want to give you guys my quick thoughts on what's happened this past week on Dynamite, SmackDown, and the Rampage main event women's street fight. First off, Dynamite. I gotta say this: the set for the new era of Dynamite and pretty much every other AEW show that's not a pay-per-view. I mean, that set looks great. It looks awesome. It pops a hell of a lot better. I'm sure a lot of you guys were, impartial to the old chandelier set, but they've been rocking with that since 2019. It was time for a change. The set looks great. I didn't get a chance to say that last week, obviously, because this is the first episode. And yeah, Dynamite was real nice. It was real cool, aside from the fact that people were disappointed that Mercedes wasn't there. It still turned out to be a pretty decent show. I like the segment before Bryan Danielson and Takeshita, I'm hoping I said his name right, had their match. MJF came out and pretty much roasted the entire LA crowd, including actor Ken Jeong, who many people will remember for that infamous segment with him and Jeremy Piven when they were guest hosts of Raw. calling SummerSlam the Summerfest. He roasted him. He also roasted Freddie Prinze Jr., former WWE writer Freddie Prinze Jr., the same Freddie Prinze Jr. who is supposedly starting his own promotion really soon. Dude, MJF called Freddie a Scooby-Dooby douchebag. That was pretty funny. You gotta love MJF, man. So, yeah. And that match between Danielson and Takeshita, that was a really good match. The night began with Hangman Adam Page versus Jon Moxley. Now, playing off the fact that Moxley gave him a freaking concussion the last time they were in the ring with that King Kong lariat. And, you know, they had a great match, you know, very physical, very violent. Hangman pretty much gave Jon Moxley his receipt with the buckshot lariat to end the match, where they ended up being a little bit concerned about Jon Moxley, but ultimately he's okay. Then came the return of Adam Cole, baby. That's right. Adam Cole returned to AEW on Dynamite. His first appearance since he himself suffered a concussion at Forbidden Door. I was there at Forbidden Door. It did not look good. The match had to be rushed to finish. You know, when they found out Cole was pretty much knocked out cold, and you know they had to pretty much end the match from there. But you know he's back now, and he pretty much bait and switch it everybody with the whole good news, bad news. Everything's going on. He has a new appreciation for pro wrestling and his life, and all he wanted to do was be a professional wrestler. He saw doctors multiple times a week, had dizzy spells, was in the car. He was in the car for more than 15 minutes. He would vomit. Britt would have to check on him to see if he was okay. He didn't know what was happening to him. He pretty much showed love and appreciation for the fans who have been there for him throughout the last 6 months. That was the good news. The bad news, however, was not for him. It was for the entire AEW locker room, because Adam Cole is back. He is not going anywhere. He thought his career was over. He thought he was finished, but he's not done yet. He will make a promise that one day he will be at the top of the mountain. Very good to see Adam Cole back. They really need somebody like Adam Cole back in the ranks. I already mentioned the stuff about, Saraya and Toni Storm versus Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter. Then came the Death Triangle versus the Elite in the final match of the Best of 7 series, Escalera de la Muerte for the AEW World Trios Championship. Look, back and forth, you know how it is when it came to Death Triangle and the Elite. You saw this match 6 times already. So, yeah, a lot of good, interesting high spots. But ultimately, you had to know the Elite was once again going to be the World Trios Champions. I mean, come on. Come on. It was a foregone conclusion. So, once again, the Elite are Trios Champions. And let me just say this real quick, man. For all this shit that happened between the Elite and CM Punk, that whole brawl out that happened, shortly after CM Punk went on this huge tirade at the All Out Media Scrum that not only made AEW look bad, and definitely the guy that was sitting next to him look bad, that being Tony Khan, but then you got into this whole little scuffle with the Elite, and then Ace Steel was involved, and Larry the Dog was involved. Look, man, I'm with Dax Harwood when he talked about on the FTR podcast that they just need to let cooler heads prevail and just do business, man. Just put all this shit past them and just do business. And, even though Punk pretty much took a swipe at the current rating situation when he was referencing MJF winning 2 PWI awards and having his name taped over one of them for a feud of the year, He said, and Punk Punk told him, "Why don't you add some tape for those ratings? You know, because they've been sucking lately." I know I'm just paraphrasing here because it's just man. But I mean, I'm really hoping that they can just get past that bullshit, man, and just get back to doing business, especially now with Vince being back in charge. I don't think you would want to go back to WWE anytime soon, but, you know, again, stranger things have happened. You never know what may happen in the world of pro wrestling. On to SmackDown. Now, SmackDown was built off of Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn for the umpteenth time, but this time it's about Sami proving himself to be an invaluable member of the bloodline, proving himself to the tribal chief Roman Reigns. You know, proving his loyalty. So, you know, Sami and KO had a great match. You know, obviously they've fought each other many times before. And, you know, before things could really get going and Sami was about to pull off his Aluva kick, in came the Usos and Solo Sikoa to beat up Kevin Owens and, you know, lay him out with a power bomb, lay him out. Solo Sikoa do the splash through the announce table, you know, and Sami looking all despondent, like, what are you doing? I had this, you know, but, you know, obviously, you know, the story between the Sami and the Usos still playing itself out. You know, it's going to end up happening that they're going to turn on Sami, right? Come on. We know that's what's going to end up happening. Elsewhere in the show, you had Gunther putting his IC title on the line against Braun Strowman. And, you know, it was a physical battle between the two. Ultimately, Gunther retained the Intercontinental Championship and has declared himself in the 30-man Royal Rumble match. It's always good to see a good horse fight, you know what I'm saying? Then, of course, Rey Mysterio comes out, addresses his whole situation with Dominic, acting like a hardened criminal. He's fed up with the bullshit. He's declaring himself as an entrant in the Royal Rumble and winning the Royal Rumble. That's when Karrion Kross came out. Pretty much made things more personal with Rey, talking about his son. And then, you know, they got to fighting. Tries to get him to 619, but then Scarlett trips him. And then Kross got him in the cross jacket submission, putting him to sleep. You know, the whole deal with that. The women's matches, oh my God, the women's matches, I swear. The women's division really need some serious work between both shows. Well, hell, pretty much all of WWE, to be honest. Tegan Nox versus Xia Li. Xia Li, where the hell have you been, darling? Good to see you. But yeah, it was just whatever. And then later on, you had Raquel Rodriguez versus Liv Morgan. What the hell are they doing with Liv, man? It seems like ever since her program with Ronda Rousey, she has just lost all momentum. Now she the crazy girl who gotta get tables. And, you know, it's just, what are y'all doing with Liv, man? I mean, Raquel, you know, coming off that whole little deal a week or 2 weeks back, where she was taking on Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's title. She got beat, and that's when fucking Charlotte Flair comes back after a 7-month absence, and just takes the fucking title off of Ronda. Oh my God. Everybody want to talk about Mercedes, but I guarantee you, I would take Mercedes any goddamn day over fucking Charlotte Flair, that overrated piece of shit. I'm sorry. If it wasn't for the fact that your father is Ric Flair, you would not even have stood a fucking chance. And you wouldn't even be 14-time world champion, women's champion. Politics, fucking politics. I hate it. But anyway, then I talked about Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. Oh yeah, the Bray Wyatt segment where he was in the rocking chair, pretty much looking like old Bray Wyatt. You know, he pretty much was bringing some of that classic Bray Wyatt flavor. He now knows who he is. He said that it's wild how sometimes one forgets who they are and where they came from, but all it takes is someone to send them in the right direction. All one has to do is revel in what they are, and says he is the color red in a black and white world. He says that he now knows who he is, the Eater of Worlds and Uncle Howdy, and his rebirth will come at the Royal Rumble. He tells LA Knight when the lights go out, he should run. So we're going to end up getting old Wyatt family Bray Wyatt, the Eater of Worlds Bray Wyatt, back into the fold. He's bringing that back to go against LA Knight in this pitch black match taking place at the Royal Rumble. Should make for a very interesting match. So anyway, that was SmackDown. Rampage. Not really much to talk about there. There was two notable things that happened on Rampage. One was a segment involving Paul Walter Hauser, who won Best Supporting Actor earlier in the week at the Golden Globes for the Apple TV series Blackbird. Now Hauser was in the ring with Renee Paquette to talk about his Golden Globe. He was interrupted by Danhausen, who won his own award for being the #1 merchandise seller in AEW. Then out came Triple J, Double J, Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal, Satnam Singh, Sanjay Dutt. They all came out, to try to taunt, try to intimidate Hauser. Hauser, had some little quips for all of them. He said, Jarrett looks like a woman that can run a Crunch Fitness. You carry that guitar everywhere, but I never actually see you play it. And the rest of your crew look like they're going to a school prom or something like that. Of course, he ended up getting beat down. He could take a very good bump, man. Jarrett hit him with the guitar and got his award stolen. Man, Doogie, and Jarrett called him Doogie Hauser and blah blah blah. So this whole thing is far from over. But then again, but of course, before they could do even further damage, Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends show up to try to run Jarrett and his crew out the ring. So yeah, it was it's crazy. And then of course we got to the main event, the brutal street fight between, I guess now Ty Mello and Anna Jay, the besties, Tay J, going up against Ruby Soho and Willow Nightingale. I mean, I don't know if you want to consider it comparable to the match that Tay J had with the Bunny and Penelope Ford at that Rampage in Jacksonville. But man, this is just as violent. Ruby Soho, she was a fucking bloody fucking mess, man. My God. She delivered a stomp. I mean, this is all over a double stomp off the apron. Soho got busted open, and man, it was just bad. They did all sorts of, they had barbed wire, chairs, tables, and of course thumbtacks got involved. And then there's that table spot. Willow Nightingale, God bless her. She was going for that, what I would call the Bubba Ray Mae Young spot from Raw back in 2000, doing a diving powerbomb onto a table. She was going to hit Anna Jay with it, only she missed it by that much. Pretty much putting herself through the table, and Anna Jay's body landed on the floor. I'm pretty sure that was kind of padded. Wasn't real concrete. We wouldn't want another Matt Hardy situation on our hands, for those who remember his match with Sammy Guevara at All Out 2020. Yeah, that was bad. But Willow, you're gonna have to slow it down, girl. We don't need you to be called the AEW version of Nia Jax, okay? Come on. I mean, I'm sure it was just a mistake. That table should have been out there just a little bit more. It was kind of closer to the stage. But thankfully, everybody's okay. And man, And then Ruby hit Tay Mello with the Destination Unknown, which is essentially Sister Abigail, and did it right on the damn thumbtacks. And mercilessly, this match was over. It was a brutal, brutal match. Ultimately, Ruby Soho and Willow Nightingale won the match, and it was. And the fucked up part about it is it was damn near hardly anybody in that building compared to the Dynamite portion of that taping. I mean, y'all just give it y'all all. Ruby was bleeding buckets. That credit to all four of those women for literally busting their ass, and it was a nice match. I'm not gonna hate on it. It was a good match. That's gonna do it for this inaugural episode of the Royal Ramble Wrestlecast. If you made it all the way through, I thank you very much for listening. We're definitely gonna have more in store. Make sure you follow the Royal Ramble Wrestlecast on Instagram as well as Facebook at Royal Ramble Wrestlecast. You can look forward to a new episode every weekend, at the very least every Sunday. And don't forget, when it comes to pay-per-views, I will be live shortly after the show, whether it's a WWE or an AEW event. Sometimes it might even be an independent event. Sometimes it might be New Japan. You just never know. That's why you need to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you'll know whenever I get the chance to do those pay-per-view events. That's going to do it for me for right now. And until the next episode, it's your boy Big Dame, and I am OUT. Peace.